Welcome to the Quantum Biology Collective podcast, where we break down the practical strategies of this emerging science, starting with healthy light habits and going wherever the quantum superhighway takes us. When you start to look at health through the quantum biologic lens, you end up making a lot of really incredible connections, as so many of the fabulous guests on this podcast have outlined for us. And today's guest is no exception. Dr. Jalal Khan is a dentist in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. He's been studying quantum biology for many years, and he has made connections between our teeth, our eyes, the cones in our eyes, the bones in our head, and how all of these communicate with the whole rest of our body. It's a super intriguing, mind-blowing way to look at dentistry that has the potential to change how we think about this piece of the medical establishment. It's really game-changing, and I can't even give a summary of it because there are sort of too many moving parts. So I'm just going to get right into the interview with Dr. Khan, where he outlines how he came into this work and what he sees as the way forward in terms of true quantum health, starting in our mouths. Enjoy. All right, Dr. Jalal Khan, welcome to the Quantum Biology Collective podcast. I'm delighted to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Meredith. I'm really excited to be here.
All right, so let's start by getting into your story. Your background is in dentistry. You did all of the traditional education and training. How did you end up down the quantum biology rabbit hole?
Yeah, it's pretty strange for a dentist to be down this rabbit hole, hey? But I guess the journey for me started maybe 2017, 2018, when there was like a shift in my mindset, just as a health clinician. And so I've been a dentist for almost 5 years, and I was thinking, well, there's got to be more to dentistry than just drilling and filling, which is primarily what we're taught. And so I started to look into other areas of dentistry, and that took me down the pathway of something called dental sleep medicine, which we might talk about later on, and the understanding of how the way that the jaws and the face develop can have a big impact on airway, which means breathing. And obviously, when you're breathing properly, particularly while you're sleeping, that helps to improve health because, as we all know, we're all trying to make recommendations for people so that they can sleep better, so that they can heal better from all the rigors of the day. And so there was like definitely a big shift for me as a traditional dentist with that traditional training to start to think outside the box. And I had a few family members that had a few chronic health issues, which they were not being served with traditional medical care. And as a dentist, we have to do the first 2 years of lectures is with the medical students. And so we're very familiar with the jargon, and we're very familiar with all of the science and the physiology and the biochemistry of it all. So I thought, well, I know all the terminology. Maybe I should go and do some research myself for my family members. And so I did so. And traditionally it was, as many of us have done, working our way through the maze of like nutrition and diet and exercise and trying to work out, is it a this diet, is it a that diet, what's it going to be for the person that we're trying to help. And then I was lucky that one of my patients actually just mentioned the name Dr. Jack Kruse and just said, you should just have a look. And so I listened to a podcast of Dr. Kruse's a while back, and he was talking about how time in our body is based on stochastic calculus. And I was just like, what? Like, I, I was like, how am I supposed to understand this? And so, but I guess it's just my nature that I like to make sense of really complex things and then distill it down into something that's simple for me to understand. So I just went down that quantum biology rabbit hole. And I think it's important, at least for me, to acknowledge that Dr. Kruse has been instrumental in pulling a lot of things together, like, the biophysics, the biochemistry, the biology, physiology, as well as evolution, etc., to kind of create this framework of understanding about how nature works. And so that was critical for me. But I've read a lot of the books that Dr. Kruse has recommended. So
Hmm.
May Wonho's books on biophysics, obviously, the Pollack's books on water, and a lot of other books about energy, about sound, about understanding more of the deeper science to the frequency side of things. And here we are several years later, with a firm understanding of, or I believe to be a firm understanding of quantum biology and quantum health, quantum medicine. But then I'm kind of thinking, how can I apply this to how can I apply this to dentistry? Is there a way that we can marry the two together and kind of create something that's a bit innovative, like a bit of a step forward in dentistry? So that's been the project that's been bubbling in my mind for the last 12, 18 months, and it's really started to come to fruition in the last, say, 6 months or so. So I'm really excited to share some of the things that I'm doing.
That is really cool. And I really want to get into, because you are opening a quantum dentistry clinic, which could possibly be unique in the world. I don't know. I know a couple other dentists who are into this, but I don't know if they've shifted their practice to orient around it or not. So that is really interesting. And before we dive into what that looks like, could you just explain sort of what your take is if you were talking to somebody or a new patient maybe, and they were like, why are you a quantum dentist? What does that mean sort of practically for me? And yeah, the framework that Dr. Kruse has created by seeing connections amongst the academic quantum biology research and then the circadian biology research and all of the other
Yes.
things that he weaves together. I totally agree. It's like it's a beautiful framework. So what does that mean, for someone who's new to it? What would you tell
That's a,
them?
that's a really great question, actually, because I've been thinking that I should do a video one day where it's like, what is it like for a new patient to come and see me? So if someone's a new patient that comes to see me, it's an hour consultation, and I I've I I don't spend more than a few minutes looking inside the mouth. And so
Mm,
literally it's an entire consultation. I'm sitting across from them. We're not in a dental chair. So it's like a proper, like typical consult room. And so it's not a dental setting because I want to get people away from like the dental setting and the anxieties that are associated with that.
mhm, mhm,
So they're nice and comfortable, which means that they're more likely to open up their minds and open up their hearts to what they're feeling inside, what they're going through inside. And so I basically start with this a very simple question: how can I help you? And they start to talk through, and I start to ask more questions. And some of them are open questions, some of them are closed questions. It's just like kind of starting to get a bit of a picture, and it usually takes me 10, 15 minutes, and I'm asking questions like, how much screen time do you have at work, after work? What time do you sleep? Do you find it hard to fall asleep? When you are asleep, do you find it hard to stay asleep? All of these types of things, just so I can get a bit of a picture about what their sleep is like. And so usually that'll take about 20, 25 minutes to take a thorough history, and then I'll move them into we have a flat table, kind of like an osteopathic or physical therapist type table in the room, as opposed to a dental chair. And I'll have them lay there, and I'll have a look inside their mouth just for a couple of minutes, take a few points and notes, and then I'll bring them back across the table from me, and we'll have another conversation. And that's when I'll kind of give them the download about what it is that I actually do. And so it's like I say that I'm explaining to them the importance of circadian rhythms as being the bedrock um, of all chronic diseases that we have in modern society these days. At least at the biophysical level, circadian rhythm is the big issue. At a metaphysical level, something we might touch on later. I feel there are other causes behind some of the chronic diseases that we have. Um, and so once I start to lay that foundation about light, about blue light, about safe and responsible exposure to sun, then I start to loop in, okay, well, how does this relate to the mouth and the teeth? Well, we're receiving all of this information that's coming in through the eyes on the skin, and that's got to pass through the fascia in order for different systems to talk to each other. And fascia is a physical tissue at the end of the day. And when there are knots and twists and bends in the fascia, and there's trigger points, and there's like a locking up of the hip or the back or the shoulder, well, that impacts the information transduction through the fascia. and what a lot of so then I explain how a lot of pain that is throughout the body can be resolved through work inside the mouth and using the mouth as like a postural correction tool, as well as a tool that helps to stabilize postural corrections. So then they're like, "What? You got rocks in your head? Like that can't possibly be true." So that's when I kind of do a little bit of kinesiology. I do a little bit of muscle testing, postural control testing, like pushing on arms to see how different structures are in terms of strength and stability. And then I do those same tests like with different positions of the tongue, with different positions of the jaw, just to demonstrate how I can make somebody stronger instantly just by changing their jaw position or changing their tongue position, etc. Or placing something underneath their big toe because I look at the feet as well. I'm one of those weird dentists that looks at feet too. Um, and so within 5 minutes of just, the muscle testing, etc., I'm able to show the patient that yes, there are some things going on in your body. Yes, I can help you. This is how I help you. And then we just take it from there.
Wow. So this is where a quantum approach really blows my mind, because you can say sort of that making small changes to the posture of your mouth is going to affect the posture of your body. And from a traditional perspective, yeah, that sounds crazy. But when we understand that everything is sort of signaling everything else all the time, that kind of makes sense. So walk us through how that's possible.
Sure. So like you said, a small change can have a big or an amplified impact. And much like when one photon comes in through our eye, it can be amplified a millionfold. So it's kind of like a butterfly effect. That same thing is happening with the teeth. So the way that the teeth come together can impact the way that the cranial bones are arranged, which then can impact how the head sits on the spine, which then impacts, the whether someone has a scoliosis or a straightening of the spine in an undesirable way, etc. So basically, quantum dentistry, in a nutshell, is that changes in the mouth can have nonlinear effects throughout the body. And so then we have to think about, okay, well, what are the functions of the mouth? So one function of the mouth, of course, is like phonation, like just speaking, being able to articulate yourself, control your breathing, use your tongue and your lips appropriately. Another one is mastication or chewing, and being able to chew your foods with comfort. But a lot of people don't know that the teeth individually actually sit on acupuncture meridians or traditional Chinese meridians. And so when the teeth come together, it's actually kind of creating a piezoelectric charge to recharge that meridian. We don't spend a lot of time throughout the day with our,
Wow. I've never heard that. That's so cool.
yeah. So, I mean, we don't
So would
spend a lot
that
of,
mean that it's important to eat different textures of food? Like sometimes to eat like a
yeah.
carrot versus just eating like mashed potatoes or hummus or
Well,
something?
I think we have a lot of people that are not actually just chewing their food. Like who sits there and
Right.
chews 20 times before they swallow? We're
Right.
all in a rush and we're all like rah 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 rah, rah, and then we'll swallow the food quickly without chewing through it properly. So I think there's an element of that. I think definitely having harder foods or tougher foods is better from a craniofacial development perspective because we want to that old adage, use it or lose it, right? So we want to
Mhm.
be using the muscles that are using them for what they're designed for, which is chewing. But we don't spend a lot of time with our teeth together, actually.
Mhm.
We're rarely kind of walking around or listening to someone speak with our teeth actually touching. So really, our teeth only touch when we are chewing, and it's important because it helps to recharge the electrical flow through the meridians. But I mean, one of the other, I guess, the third big aspect of the mouth in terms of like the nonlinear effects throughout the body is its impact on breathing because the jaws sit right in front of the airway or the windpipe. And so when we have small jaws, it means that the jaws are not just smaller in dimension, but they're also further back inside the head. So they haven't grown down and forwards out of the head like they're supposed to. And that means that it pushes the tongue further back against the airway, which means that the airway, instead of being this big, is now this big. And so it's literally
Mm.
harder to breathe. And so when someone lays on their back while they're sleeping, the tongue, like all muscles, gets a little bit lazy and a little bit sloppy. And so it flops back onto the airway to make it even harder to breathe. And so then we start to have snoring or we start to have sleep apnea. And that means a disruption to sleep quality, which, destroys circadian rhythms because of sleep fragmentation. It destroys the hormone cycle. So a lot of the time, I mean, I have a lot of people, new patients come to me saying I'm sleeping poorly.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's actually just a completely circadian dysfunction issue.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's an airway issue. Sometimes it's both.
Right.
And so we have this whole industry of functional dentists who are well-intentioned, well-meaning, who are focusing on airways and thinking that everyone that sleeps poorly is sleeping poorly because they're not breathing right, because their jaws are too small. And then we have on the other side, on the flip side, a lot of circadian-minded clinicians who are thinking that everybody that's sleeping poorly, it's purely a light issue, when it
Mm-hmm.
could very well be a breathing issue. And so we
Right.
don't have enough clinicians that are thinking about both sides. And so I think it's really
Right.
important to highlight that point that there's always we will as practitioners we've got to do our best to just know a little bit about different disciplines, which is
Mm-hmm.
why like a podcast like this and you sharing your platform is amazing because it really helps people just get the tidbits that they need to know in order to help their child out or help their mother or father out in some of the health issues that they're having. But the big thing that I've uncovered, it's not something which I've kind of invented, so to speak, or like coined myself, but I've happened to come across it, is the role that the mouth has in the way that the cranial bones move. And that for me has been like the superpower of the mouth, because we have 22 bones in our head, and those 22 bones they're moving ever so slightly, ever so gently against each other. And that movement of the cranial bones actually helps to pump cerebro-spinal fluid up and down the central nervous system, particularly in the nighttime, because that's when the brain gets cleaned. That's when the lymphatic system, which is the lymphatic system of the brain, gets cleaned. And so we need to have optimal movement of the cranial bones. So like the temporal bones, they externally rotate, they come back in, and then the back of the head kind of flexes out, flexes back in. So all these things are happening in you and I right now. We can't feel it, we can barely see it. But cranial osteopaths or osteopaths who are trained in the cranial paradigm, they're really good at sensing the movement of the cranial bones.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of people who are growing up with that movement of the cranial bones actually locked up. And the reason it's locked up is that's kind of where the detective work comes in. That's why I could talk to a patient for an hour without looking inside of their mouth because I'm like, okay, how were you born? Was it was it an emergency C-section? How long was the labor? Was the cord wrapped around your neck? And so asking all these little questions, did you pass through the birth canal or was it a C-section? Because the birth canal, aside from microbiome, also helps to shape the head.
Mm-hmm.
So all these little things, as you were growing up, did you have a sports injury? Were you part of a motor vehicle accident? Um, did you climb a fence and, fall off and land on your head when you were, 7 or something? All these little things. Were you riding horses and you fell off and landed on your tailbone? And so all these little things that have a big impact on the way that the cranial bones move, because tailbone injuries as well are quite crucial because the cranium and the tailbone are literally connected with a virus sheath, which is called the dura mater. It's like this membrane that wraps around the spinal cord and anchors into the tailbone,
Yeah.
but then kind of clicks into the cranium from the inside. And so if we get a twist in the tailbone because we fell on our tailbone, that can actually create a equal and opposite twist in the cranium the other way,
Mm.
which and so once we get this lockup of the cranial bone movement, we don't have ample pumping of this cerebrospinal fluid up and down the central nervous system. And this restricts the growth of the face forwards in children because
Mm.
there is this paradigm of thinking in functional dentistry. And much like there are some holes in functional medicine, I would say there are definitely some holes in functional dentistry because the functional dentists are just talking about airways and how it's all about the jaws and how the three ways to make sure that the three reasons that jaws are small, which means crowded teeth, is we're not eating foods that are hard enough. We're not breastfeeding our children or not breastfeeding them for long enough. Very easy for me to say as a male, so I'm conscious of that. But also we are we have children that are growing up with nasal obstruction. They've got a blocked nose. And when you have a blocked nose, your mouth has to open in order to breathe. Otherwise, it's game over. But that means your tongue is down, and the tongue needs to be up against the roof of your mouth because the tongue is the best orthodontist. That is the best orthodontist
Yeah.
to develop the dental arches. But what the functional dentists haven't realized yet, and I do say that they're well intentioned, they've just yet to come across it, is the fact that it's actually the head, it's actually the cranium and those bone movements that drives the growth of the face and the jaws forward. So when that's locked up for reasons which I've just spoken about,
Mm-hmm.
um, it restricts the growth of the jaws, which means the jaws are small, which means the teeth are crowded. And so
Mm-hmm.
then we have this like quandary. What do we do as a profession to straighten the teeth?
Yeah.
Um, and so it really comes back to respecting the body's intelligence. So the body's put those teeth in a crowded position for a reason. It doesn't look very nice, but it's functional. That like the body's done that on purpose. So it works. So I like to think of it as a functional misalignment.
Right. Okay.
And then we as a profession take that misalignment and we straighten the teeth.
Mm-hmm.
And the cranium's like, what are you doing? Don't move the teeth there. I needed them there.
Mm.
And so now what we have is we have straight teeth, but we have a crooked cranium. And so we've still got this misaligned body, but now we've got the straight teeth. So there's a mismatch. So it's an alignment, but it's a dysfunctional alignment.
Dysfunction. Okay. So that would be if you would just went and got braces like those, the traditional braces, the railroad tracks that, we all had when we were children.
Yeah, I
And you
mean, I
come out
had
and your teeth are super straight for like 5 years. And then,
and then they relapse, don't they?
yes.
And so by relapse, what I mean by that is the teeth actually start to drift back to the way that they were. They may not drift back entirely, but they might drift
Hmm.
back a little bit. So my explanation for that is the cranium winning. That is the cranium saying, no, you put them there. I needed them there, so I'm going to move them back.
Right.
And so then what we as a profession have done is we're like, okay, because we're super smart. Mankind is super smart. We don't respect the laws of nature. So we're like, okay, let's put a wire behind those teeth to lock them in.
Yeah.
And so the cranium's like, well, that's not fair. Now I can't move the teeth back. And so now that's become rigid. So
Hmm.
I'm sorry, but I have to attack a different part of your structural system. So it might be the left jaw joint, or it might be the first
Mm,
cervical vertebra, or it might be a shoulder. And so now we start to see
I
that these
see.
small changes in the mouth are actually having wholesale effects in the postural system because the way that the body works as this, you know, unified one kinematic chain is not being respected. It's not being understood. And so that's
Right.
how we really start to hurt people. Like the number of children that I see who have had braces, who have had
Hmm.
expanders, which are appliances to make the upper jaw bigger.
Yeah.
And they come to me and the parents have spent five, six, $7,000 and the children have headaches or they've got jaw clicks or they're still not breathing properly, etc. And the parents are distraught. It breaks my heart.
Yeah.
So uh, the children are tired of treatment. They don't want appliances in their mouth anymore because they've already done 3 years, etc., etc. And so I'm really passionate about raising awareness about the fact that this has to be done properly. And so
Yes.
and so the way that I do it properly is I work alongside a manual therapist that knows how to align the rest of the body.
Wow.
And that
So you have
and
like an osteopath or someone in the
yeah,
office who works to align the head bones so that they no longer require the misalignment in the mouth. Everything can
correct.
be aligned. Okay.
Correct. So he'll work on the cranial bones, he'll work on the neck, he'll work on the ribs and the breathing pattern, breathing
Mm,
mechanics. sometimes we have adults and children who have like overinflated lungs, which is the reason they find it hard to breathe, or underinflated lungs, and that he can do releases on the ribs to help with that. He'll look at the feet, he'll look at the tailbone, so he'll look at the rest of the body, and then I'll use appliances that mimic the body's natural forces to drive growth, mimicking the tongue,
Mm.
as opposed to using something mechanical that has a screw inside of it and it's like a
Hmm.
very arbitrary force that I'm delivering into the patient's cranium. And so whenever I place those appliances into the patient's mouth, then the osteopath is there feeling the head and feeling the
Hmm.
response of the cranial bone. So it's kind of like a live biofeedback.
This is amazing.
Thank you.
This is really amazing what you're doing.
Thank you. It's I still get tingles every time I talk about it.
Yes, no, I have full body chills because the truth of it is so clear when the way you explain it. And you explain it so beautifully. And it's like, oh, of course.
Of course, of
Of
course.
course, that's how it works. And of course, you would, if you're going to go and like mess around with someone's teeth, you would want to look at where the teeth are. They're in the jaw, and where's the jaw? It's in the head. And what's the head? It's connected to the spine. Like, of course.
Yep. Yep. Like
Wow,
I
we
see
really
myself
messed
as
this up.
we have, I mean, I see myself as an osteopath. I'm just working on cranial bones that are at the front of the face.
Right.
Like I'm less of a dentist and more of an osteopath. And like dentistry, I'll go as far as to say is in the dark ages. Like we're still
Yeah.
practicing, some really archaic type of work. And even the well-intentioned functional dentists, I've seen some of their work because the patients come in to see me afterwards, and it's like it's horrendous, It's like the children's heads are like it's almost like they're a balloon that's just ready to pop because they've just
Mm,
been over expanded and the cranial work hasn't been done. And like the
right.
children are just distraught. You can just tell that like they're just on or they're on edge, they're on tilt. It breaks my
Hmm.
heart. And it's why I'm so vocal about this because I know the dentists aren't going to listen to me, but I know the mothers and the fathers are going to listen to me.
Yeah.
And I know the manual therapists are going to listen to me because the osteos and the chiros are looking for dentists that get it. Because there are a
Yeah.
lot of osteos and chiros that know that there's something to do with the mouth. They don't know
Yeah.
what it is. They just know that there's something in the mouth that could be upsetting the rest of the body, and they just don't know who to send their patients to because there's not many dentists that take an interest in this. Um, so, I mean, I think of it as quantum dentistry just because of like this whole nonlinear effect of changes in the mouth. But the crazy part, which I don't know if you've heard any of my other talks um, or podcasts, but is when I start to loop in the syntonics aspect of it all, which is like coloring through the eyes.
Mm,
So I don't know if you're ready to
let's
strap
go
in for
it.
that one.
Let's go there.
So so basically like we have if we talk about our visual photoreceptors inside of our eye, we've got rods and cones, but the cones, there's actually three types. So there's red cones, there's green cones, and there's blue cones. And these are literally red light receptors, blue light receptors, and green light receptors that our body uses and a combination of those allows us to see 5 million different colors in nature. But the cool thing is that there's actually individual variations. Some people have a higher density of blue cones. Some people have a higher density of red cones, and some people have a higher density of green cones. And this actually impacts the way that that person functions. So when someone is a what we would call a primary red, which means that most of the cones in their eyes are red cones, what I want to then understand is what is their secondary color? Are they a secondary blue or are they a secondary green? And
Mhm.
then once we work out the second, then we know what the third is just by the process of elimination. So how do we do that? I use kinesiology. So I'll do muscle testing on the arm and I'll kind of work out, literally ask the fascia, ask the fascia the question, the subconscious the question. And we so we'll work out, is this person a primary red or primary blue, primary green? Then we'll work out secondary. And so now we know what someone's body type is. Are they a red, green, blue? Or are they a green, blue, red? Or so there's 6 different body types: two for the greens, green, blue, and green, red, two for the blues, and two for the reds. So now every person on the planet falls into one of those 6 body types. And you start when you work with the patients over time, you start to learn the different, I guess, personality archetypes for each. So like when I discover that someone's a red green through my testing, I can just start to tell them that you're a very mission-based person. If you get a small little niggle in your structural system, it really upsets you. And they're like, how did you know that? And I'm like, in my head, it's like, because all red greens are like that. So I know what all the green blues are like. I know what all the blue reds are like, etc. So you start to build this system in your head where you're able to kind of understand a lot more about a person. And I love it when the partner is in the room, whether it's the husband or the wife, because then I can say to the husband, your wife's actually like this. She's not trying to annoy you. She's just naturally like this.
Yes.
Or vice versa. So in some ways it can save marriages. So we have this color system. And then what I do is I actually put a blue, it's like a blue kind of what's the word? It's just like a clear piece of plastic that's either blue, red, or green. And I'll hold it in front of their eyes and I'll muscle test them again. So like if someone's a red, green, blue, okay, red is their primary cone density, green is their secondary cone density, and blue is their third. I want to know what level they're operating at. Because if we think of a car as having 5 gears, red is fifth gear for that person, green is fourth gear, and blue is third gear. Okay.
Okay.
And so we want people to be operating in fifth gear. And what I haven't mentioned, which I'll mention now, is that each of the colors actually have specific traits that they relate to. So red relates to structure, literally physical structure. Green relates to cellular metabolism, gut function, and blue relates to emotion, intuition, all that type of stuff, EQ. So like that's why when we had the blues, it's because it's associated with the color blue. And so when you got a red, green, blue, when I put blue in front of their eyes, I want them to go weak because ideally I don't want them operating in third gear. When I put green in front of their eyes and I muscle test them, I want them to go weak as well. But when I put red in front of their eyes, I want them to go strong. I want them to be able to hold on the testing. So that tells me that they're in fifth gear, which means you're healthy. Now that you're healthy, we can look at growing your face properly. We can look at developing your face.
Because they're responding in strength to the
red
color that is most associated with their dominant cone.
Exactly. And so when they are responding in strength to that dominant color, they are in a position to heal.
Okay.
We can't
So
ask
they're ready. They're ready to move forward.
If they're like a 25-year-old and I want to grow their face properly, I can, because they have the vitality, they have the energy, they have the central nervous system working well. They're not overrun with stress, etc., etc. But like every second patient, Meredith, comes in and they're denatured to their secondary or tertiary level or cone density. So a red green is seeing green in the eyes, or a red green blue is seeing blue in the eyes. And that's when it's a quandary, because it's like they want to kind of help with their airways and their breathing. Or they've got, and I mean, every second person that I see as well has got, gut dysfunction and all this type of stuff. And so I'm like, well, you're a red, green, blue. Blue is your tertiary cone density, and you're spending 12 hours on the screen with blue light. What do you think that is doing to your red, green, blue status? It's denaturing you down to blue. You need to get more red light. You need to go and get more sun. You need to do red light therapy. So that's where the light aspect comes in. But the cool thing is that I can use the mouth to biohack the entire system, because I can get a patient to bite on specific teeth for each color. And when they're biting on those teeth, they instantly go back to their primary strength.
Wow. So it's that meridian is resetting them back to where they're supposed to be.
No, it's a good thought, but what it does is it resets the movement of the cranial bones to be optimal for a red person.
Ah,
So then we get the optimal flow of the cerebro-spinal fluid, and this is where I get all metaphysical and woo-woo. I believe
I
the
love
cerebro
it.
I believe the cerebrospinal fluid is the seat of the soul. I believe that's where the
Okay.
soul resides. I believe that's where the body's natural intelligence resides. The body's ability to heal resides inside of the cerebrospinal fluid. It's an ultrafiltrate of blood. It's like primarily water. We know water has memory. And I believe
Mhm.
that when you get the cerebrospinal fluid pumping optimally,
Mhm.
throughout the central nervous system, this craniosacral flow down up from the cranium down to the sacrum and back up, you unleash the body's healing potential. You unleash the body's ability to heal itself. And we've had like ridiculous results. Like we had a patient come in who has been on an infertility journey for a while.
Mhm.
She's This is when I say we, I mean myself and my cranial osteopath because
Mhm.
we pretty much work together as much as we can. And she came in, she was struggling. She had a lot of pain throughout her body, like physical pain,
Mhm.
also struggling with falling pregnant. And she's like, oh, I'm gonna have IVF soon, and this and that. And we just said to her, we was like, can you just hold off on the IVF just for a sec? Just let us make this for you. And so credit to her, she took a leap of faith. She trusted us. I made a dental appliance for her to get her to bite on the right teeth that she
Okay.
needs to. Cole did the cranial work, and we saw her a month later. She's pregnant. Like,
Wow.
I'm not to say that like this is the solution for all people that are
Yeah,
dealing
of
with
course.
infertility, but what I'm trying to paint is a picture that it unleashes the body's ability to heal,
Mhm.
and that is specific to each person's like situation and environment right now. Like
Yes.
I've
Yes.
had a young girl come in who's like literally got the blues. She's miserable. Like, she's got a lot of emotional turmoil inside of her. We give her the appliance. You only wear the appliance while you're sleeping, and she comes back
Mhm.
a month later and literally like you could feel the light coming off her. Like the non-visual light spectrum was just
Mhm.
pumping off her. Like it was incredible, like so much vitality. And for a lot of people, it does take 2-3 months for us to get that result. But for
Mhm.
some people, it's like literally it's a 1 month turnaround. And it just and these are people that are not observing the traditional things that you and I would recommend, which is morning sun, which is blocking blue light, which is
Yeah.
grounding, which is quantum nutrition, seasonal local eating, all those types of things. They're wearing their AirPods on their head, and
Mhm.
they're sleeping in Wi-Fi, but still the body has this like immense power within
Yes.
it because I mean, how much light do we bury inside of us at like the molecular level, at the intermolecular level between molecules, within the molecule, from one atom to another? Like all of these bonds have so much light buried inside of them, particularly the cerebrospinal fluid, so that when you unleash that, it's like all of any sun that person has got over the last 2 years or so is stored there ready to be unleashed. So
Right.
that's what I feel. I mean, is there any science to back it up? Like probably not, but for me, it's like
Yeah.
I see it on a day-to-day basis. It's like
Mhm.
I regard data as like just a collection of anecdotes. And you know, people trust me, we get the result, and then they would want to go and tell everybody. So yeah, it's incredible.
Yes. Yeah, and that, it really does make sense, and it resonates the way that truth does. Whether or not there's a paper on PubMed on that specific topic, who cares? So, because I completely agree, right? It's like the body does have this deep innate intelligence, and it can be the smallest thing that we give it that it's lacking or that it needed, and the result can be incredible. So what you're saying and I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So each, each of us has a dominant cone
Color.
color structure, and coordinated with that is the bones in our head are coordinated
Yeah.
along those lines. And so if those things are misaligned, we're going to have um, symptoms of some kind.
If those things are misaligned, plus, maybe you have a struggling marriage or your boss is a nuisance or your child's
Right.
ragging school or something. So it's like we've got this whole package here where it's not just structural. We also look at the emotional side of things. We also
Mm-hmm.
look at the biochemistry side of things. We also look at the vibrational side of things, like sometimes I'll refer patients to a shaman,
Mm-hmm.
or so like I kind of
Yeah.
it's not just like, okay, I'm the only person that can heal you. Like, all the treatment that you get is going to come from me. Like, I've got to know when I need to
Yes.
refer out to a psychotherapist or an acupuncturist or, another osteopath or a physical therapist or a shaman. Or,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't really refer often to, gut doctors, etc., just because
Yeah.
they're not really thinking from the quantum mindset, but I'll educate
Mm-hmm.
the patient about deuterium and about, seasonal and local and all those types of things. And sometimes we can even we can use the kinesiology, the muscle testing to determine like, okay, is this person, intolerant to dairy or lactose or eggs or something like that. And so we can kind of create a personalized nutrition plan just through muscle testing them, even
Yeah.
if it is and here's the other thing as well, which is like we know that light in the eye controls metabolism.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm sure you've covered that in previous podcasts, but now I'm saying that there's 6 different eyes. And so
Right.
like the blue reds and the blue greens and the green blues and the green reds and the red blues and the red greens, they all got different metabolism. There are some people that thrive on a carnivore diet and they're okay. That's your Sean Baker because he's a red green. But just because he thrives on the carnivore diet does not mean that someone that's a blue green can thrive on it. And this is my issue with a lot of the nutritional recommendations that are being given out there, that it's not body type specific. It's kind of like
Yeah.
it's just a one rule and that's it. I've seen
Yeah.
people that are thriving on a vegan diet and it blows my mind because I'm like, how?
Yeah.
But they're thriving. Like
Yeah, I
what
know. I have someone in my family who's been vegan for like 10 years and she's like doing fine.
And so it's like,
Like, oh, okay.
what can you say to that?
Yeah.
Like they're doing fine, great, good on them. So I guess I mean what I'm starting to build is a better understanding about like the nutritional recommendations for each specific body type,
Hmm.
and then
Yeah.
understanding okay, well, maybe doing a little bit of just, testing inside of my clinic just to recommend a diet to someone, see how they go when they come back to me, what is the response like, and then just knowing whether or not that's right or not. Like I'm better understanding that there are like some remedies or homeopathic remedies or supplements which are better for some people than others.
Right.
So it really is this whole nutritional thing. It at the end of the day, we overcomplicate it. It still boils down to seasonal and local.
Hmm.
But then just a few tweaks according to body type is like an extra ideal situation to have. So it's like another layer, it's like another lens, which isn't meant to complicate things. It's just meant to have that awareness that there is another layer
Right.
to it. Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
we all have similar retinas, with all of the melanin and the POMC through the central retinal pathway. So all of that whole leptin melanocortin pathway that Dr. Kruse has kind of unraveled over the years, that is still present in all of us. But those cone densities do vary, and I feel that does have an impact on metabolism.
Okay, this is really interesting. And I love this because I think what is so important, and you talked about it just now in terms of nutrition, but I think we could talk about it in terms of really anything, the education system or therapy or anything, is like we tend to want to find a way that's going to work on everyone and have some loose kind of structure and be like, this is the way you do it. This is the way you fix your teeth, and this is the way you eat, and this is the way you recover from trauma, and this is the way you do this. And the more people I speak to, whether I'm talking to someone about like quantum human design or talking to you about the icons, is that it's really up to us to get to know ourselves and to learn what's going to work best for us and what we need in this moment. And I think light is such a big deal right now because unless you have an outdoor lifestyle, which so few people do, you are probably deficient in healthy light and overexposed to toxic light. But that doesn't mean light's the answer to everything. It means like that's what a lot of people need right now. So it's super helpful and a foundational piece. But to move forward, whether we want to fix our teeth or fix our mood or whatever is going on, it's like that self-understanding and working with practitioners like you who facilitate that inner exploration and
Yeah.
facilitate that self-understanding to say like, what is best? What do I need? Or what is best for this particular child, not every child in the world. And I think this is such a gift that you're giving us, especially in dentistry, which is probably one of the biggest one-size-fits-all industries that there is. And here you are bringing it down to such a nuanced, individualized, coherent quantum approach. It's really
Yeah.
amazing.
Thank you. I think what you said is beautiful as well. We are we are our own healers. We have to be. We can't outsource that to anybody. We can't, like, someone can't outsource that to me. As you said, my job is to facilitate. My job is to just create a space for that person to find their way of healing. I mean, how many times have we gone to see some sort of health practitioner and we didn't get a good vibe? And so we were like, you know what, I'm going to go and get a second opinion, or I'm going to seek care from someone else. Like that is your soul saying that's not the right person. And it is the inner healer inside of you pivoting so that you can find the right person to hold space for you. So I think that, yeah, that's beautifully said, Meredith.
Yeah. No, I think this work is just so amazing. And so um back to the cones. So because we are the cones, the light goes through the cones and the light controls metabolism. So the cones have an effect on our metabolism. Could you just give a general idea of sort of what your nutritional recommendations would be for the types? So you're saying certain people would do better, probably do better with lots of animal protein, whereas certain other people might not.
Yeah,
Could
yeah,
you
sure.
just explore that a little bit?
Um, it's it's I'll try. It's nuanced though, because when someone is denatured from their primary, like, they need a
Mm-hmm.
different diet to help renature them.
Yes.
Um, but that's where the mouth comes in handy, because the mouth bypasses everything and renatures the person regardless of light, regardless of nutrition, regardless of anything, because they wear that
Okay.
splint while they're
And
sleeping
this is with the device
in their
that
mouth while they're
that
sleeping.
you use that activates the specific teeth,
Yeah, so when
that
you bite on
activates
teeth,
the bones in the head, that
exactly,
releases the cerebro-spinal fluid that
correct.
can enable the healing.
Correct. Because if anyone's ever seen a picture of a whole tooth,
Yeah.
you'll notice it's quite long. And
Mm-hmm.
so you think, well, I didn't realize the tooth was that long. And so that, like, the lowest third of the tooth is the part that kind of hangs out through the gum, but the rest of it is the root that's inside the bone. And yes, the
Right.
root has nerves and blood vessels inside of it, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things that the roots does is when you bite on the tooth, the root sends that force of the biting of the teeth through the different directions within the cranium based on what direction that root goes through. So like
Okay.
the front teeth have a single root which kind of goes up through there, and then you've got like the back teeth that have got three roots. So like there's three different force vectors going throughout the cranium. And so when you have a red, a green, or a blue biting on the specific teeth that we need them to be biting on to send the force vectors through the cranial system, which then activates the cranial bone movement to be optimized for cerebro-spinal fluid flow. That unlocks the healing potential, and that's how we're able to bypass everything and re-nature someone. But yeah, coming back to nutrition, like red greens,
Hmm.
and for instance, they thrive off a carnivore diet. Um, so do red blues. Green blues are really good on a Mediterranean diet. I happen to be a green blue, and I love Mediterranean food. So like
Mm.
um, and that's something which I see in all the green blues that I meet. We just love Mediterranean food, and so we can have a few of the carbohydrates that are associated with the Mediterranean diet, and we thrive off it. Uh, blue greens, they can have a lot of carbs. They're the traditional people that have like a marathon build to them. And so, that they'll never put on weight. It's just the way that their metabolism is. And so they can have a lot of carbs. So, those are kind of like some of the body
Right.
types and the nutrition that's associated with them. So like to have a blue green on a carnivore diet, it's not going to work. You know, that's
Right.
probably
Yeah.
that's probably the smaller 5'5" lady that's, fairly thin that, ends up with a thyroid issue because they've been on carnivore for too long, you know.
Right.
So they need to have carbohydrates. Obviously seasonal and local carbohydrates, but they need to have carbohydrates. Sean Baker doesn't need carbohydrates because the way that he would perhaps metabolize his protein and also some of the protein into sugar is just optimal because he's a red green, which is why he
Right.
thrives on it. So it's not to say that the carnivore diet is wrong. I think it's great to rescue the situation for people because it's low in deuterium, but for a lot of people, it's not a long-term diet just based on their
Yeah.
on their body type. And the other thing as well, which with the whole body typing thing, is that every body type benefits from a specific type of exercise. Some benefit from aerobic exercise, like rowing or cycling or running, and others benefit from weightlifting. And even with the weightlifting, some benefit from really heavy weightlifting with
Hmm.
short reps. Others benefit from like lighter weights, but more reps, like 12, 15, 18 reps. So
Right.
these are like some of the other recommendations that I give to people. And then like they'll go and do it and they'll come back and they'll be like, oh, I feel so much better having changed my exercise routine. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, because that's what your body's made for. You're doing what your body is made for, and your body's thanking you for it. So, like blue reds, they shouldn't be doing heavy weights. They should be, doing a triathlons or training for triathlons, and they'll be really happy.
Yeah. It's so interesting and it makes so much sense that I just feel like we put so much pressure on ourselves to find the optimal thing and do that, or I should be doing this, or I should be doing that. But I mean, it took me into my 40s to find an exercise routine that works for me because I was always trying to do things I hated because I thought I was supposed to.
Yeah, yeah.
So
What
it's
what's your
really
exercise routine that you thrive off, if you don't mind me
um,
asking?
walking and Pilates.
Okay, nice.
So, and then before that, I used to try running and I would always be miserable.
Yeah,
Um, but I found this Pilates class where it's like continuous, almost continuous movement with some resistance, and
yeah,
like the time flies by.
yeah.
And that has never ever been my experience with exercise. It was always willpower to the max. And so I
Love
didn't
it.
do it enough. Um, is there a connection with temperament or personality types that you notice with the different
100%,
colored cones?
100%. So like green blues like control. That's me. Not control in order to control people, but we just like to, sit back and like be in control of the situation. So like, we'd be good CEOs and stuff like that. Green reds are really good at planning. So, they're the ones that will make the entire travel plan for the family, or, they'll be the
Right.
good business planner. Red greens are very mission-based people. You give them the mission and they'll just go and get it done. Green reds are very, very strong from a like health perspective. They can abuse their bodies and still push through. So very, very resilient people. They're
Hmm.
commonly the people that will smoke for 50 years and not die of cancer. It's because they're green reds. Or they maybe smoked in the sun. Who knows? But but
Balanced it out.
but yeah, so there's personality types, there's archetypes, there's nutritional archetypes, there's exercise archetypes associated with all of these body types. And it's really it's really it's really exciting for me as a clinician because it just gives me so many answers for people that
Yeah.
they have never heard of before, but they're like, oh, it just makes so much sense. I used to do a lot of running when I was younger, and I was like way happier and way healthier, and my weight was under much better control than what it is now when I've been trying to, do pull-ups and bench press and squats, etc. I'm like, yeah, that's because you're not designed for that. And then it's like, oh, thank you. I can get out of that now,
Right.
so yeah, it's a privilege, honestly, to kind of have this knowledge. And I acknowledge Dr. Kruse before I would like to acknowledge a dentist in Sydney that really put a lot of this together. He was a gentleman
Hmm.
by the name of Tony Ancell, who unfortunately passed away in 2019. Sadly, he, to my knowledge, and one of his colleagues said, didn't necessarily look after himself, but really looked after his patients.
Yeah.
I think we as health practitioners also need to be mindful of self-care for ourselves as well. But Tony was an incredible man, and an absolute shapeshifter within the space of dentistry, and definitely um, didn't receive the attention that his work deserved. And
Yeah.
so, since his passing, to my knowledge, not many within Sydney are carrying on this work. I, as you know, I definitely am, and I'm amplifying it because I'm working alongside a cranial osteopath,
Hmm.
and I guess shifting my entire clinical practice to be just doing this for adults and children because there's people to be saved that haven't been served by traditional dentistry, and so it's almost like um, sometimes I dream of leaving the big city with, all the EMFs, etc. But there's a part of me that feels a immense responsibility to stay
Yeah.
here unless I train someone else to know what I know so that they can carry the torch forward because there's people that need help and I just feel compulsion to be here.
Yes. And that's true. And especially with what you have to offer that is doable by somebody who lives in the city, they can, and it's something that will make sense in their paradigm. It's like, I'm going to a dentist, he's going to give me a device and that's going to help. So bless you for doing that. And so is that where your clinic is that's opening on Mondays?
Yeah, what a time to record this. So I have a new clinic that's opening on Monday in Sydney, New South Wales, which is one of the states within Australia. And it's it's a mix of general dentistry, but also all of this like dental osteopathic type work that I do. And we'll have optimal light environments. We've got some globes which are going to mimic the blue light of the sun throughout the day, which will be nice. And so if we are
Wonderful.
working late one night, they'll probably go red.
Yeah,
And so like they're definitely lighting. I'm very sensitive to light now, given my observance of like, blocking blue light and lots of sun. So when I have too much bright artificial light, it sets me off. So I've set up the clinic to be mindful of that. There's no Wi-Fi, everything's networked.
wow, good for you.
So yeah, it's very, very, very exciting. It's a fresh start and big things to come.
That is so great. And you see everybody in person, or do you do any virtual consults?
Um, I I see everybody in person just because that's the
Guess
way that I
you can't do virtual osteopathy, but
you can't. I mean, I could probably do like body typing virtually, etc. But if I was to start to offer that, I'd be busy doing telecons, and
yeah,
not doing much work in person, I feel.
yeah.
And I feel it really rewarding to just work in person.
Hmm.
So I am coming to the States in September, and I'm hoping to actually do a 1 day event where I'll be kind of showcasing all of this that I've spoken about today,
Wonderful.
with some it's open to anybody. My hope is that maybe a few dentists might come, but also a few manual therapists and anyone else that's interested in the
Hmm.
health space. So I think we're targeting the date of September the 29th in Florida, and the goal is to showcase this and maybe even do some live demonstrations in front of any willing participants. Nothing would hurt. So yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, I look forward to helping you promote that and getting as many people there as possible.
Thank you.
Um,
Appreciate that.
and yeah, I hope you are able to teach this and spread the word as far and wide as possible. So one quick question on the device that you use. Is that a device that you designed, or is that Dr. Ancell, or where did that
It's
come
a,
from? Because
it's
it's
a,
one
it,
of those deeply genius genius
yeah.
things.
So Dr. Ansell, he kind of worked out the optimal teeth that needed to be for each body type.
Hmm.
And I've kind of made the design a little bit more nuanced to improve the comfort of wearing it, because the way that he was making it was very hard on the nervous system, and so like the appliance is a lot softer. So because it's a lot softer in the way that it fits against the teeth, it doesn't upset the nervous system as much. So my osteopath who used to work with Tony Ansell, 10 plus years ago, he says that the response that we're getting with these new designs is a lot better than the old one, just because of the changes in it. So a mixture of both of us, but most of the genius does go to Tony for piecing a lot of it together. I would go as far as to say that like he's almost like a Jack Kruse type figure in
Hmm.
dentistry for me, because of his
Yeah.
ability to tie in the syntonics and the dental side of things. I've looped in the cranial side of things now, so like, which is a nice little add-on. But yeah, his work was incredible, and it's an honor to carry it forward.
Yeah. Well, this is amazing work. Thank you for doing it. And yeah, I think you're going to change the industry.
I hope so, for the sake of everyone that needs this type of care. I hope so.
Yeah. Save us all from the railroad braces. We're almost like a
Well,
torture
that's
device.
like, if I can see children between the ages of like 4 through to 8 or 9, we can save them from all of that trauma, and it saves the
Yeah.
parents a lot of money, and we do it right, because you
Yeah.
end up with a straight face, a straight head, beautiful breathing pattern, they're sleeping well, and it's like you've just given that child like the um best step forward for them to just succeed at life. I mean, we set up an entire business which we called the Quantum Kid, because we want to raise a generation of quantum kids who
Yeah.
are optimally developed from a facial perspective, from a
Hmm.
breathing perspective, but also we want them to understand blue light. We want them to understand, seasonal local nutrition. We have these conversations with the kids when they're in the clinic.
Wonderful. And is that like a program, or can people access that?
So it's a program of care. Like, we see the children in person, and we're delivering appliances,
Hmm.
Cole's working on the head at the same time, and I mean, we do have a few online courses which are available worldwide for, like facial exercises to optimize the function of the lips and the tongue, and a breathing course as well, is if parents in the States are interested in that, because those are like foundational
Yeah.
to all of the craniofacial work that we do. So if you can't necessarily access the work in person with us, you can at least have those kind of foundational things down pat.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. I know it's a busy time with your clinic opening so soon. So I'm going to post this week so that it's
Amazing.
up and launching and announcing the launch of probably the most innovative and truly holistic approach to the dental and overall wellness that we have available. So thank you.
Amazing. That's an honor. Thank you so much, Meredith.
This has been the Quantum Biology Collective podcast. To find a practitioner who practices from this point of view, visit our directory at quantumbiologycollective.org. If you are a practitioner, definitely take a look at the Applied Quantum Biology Certification, a 6-week study of the science of the new human health paradigm and its practical application with your patients and clients. We also love to feature graduates of the program on this very podcast. Until next time, the QBC.